Hey everyone, Jason Lawrence here. I got a very exciting day for me today. In fact, I just left closing of a property that I helped to split for the property owner. And I had a phone call from somebody, this was almost a year ago, going back to April of last year. Today is January 6th of 2023. This was in April of 2022. We're building a house on a property, kind of wooded, rural area. And I got a call from somebody that was wondering if I did real estate and if we could sell their land for them. And they wanted to split the land, but they said that the town that they lived in wouldn't allow them to do it. So I looked into it and I said, why don't I get back to you? Let me take a look at things and see if this is something that's able to be split. And I was able to figure out via the zoning for the town and the county what you were able to do there as far as splitting the property. And I went through the whole process of getting that property split and divided and getting new tax key numbers for it, and then selling the properties. And we had our first closing today for one of those new lots that sold. Now, going back a little bit, I want to give you a little bit of history on what I did to kind of make this all work. So the property owner was wondering what it was going to take, to be able to split these properties and sell these properties as individual properties. Because when I called her back and I told her that it was able to be split, you can sell it, you can split it, we can do that. Gave her two numbers. This is how much it would sell for if you just sold off. At that point, she would have been selling off like a 30 to 35 acre chunk. This is the amount of money that you can make if you're just selling off 30 to 35 acres. But this is the amount of money that you can make if we take that 30 to 35 acres and create 3 lots. And we actually ended up creating 2 5-acre parcels and 1 22-acre parcel. And there's reasons for that, but it was much more advantageous. There's much more money to be made by doing that than selling it all as one piece. Now, why is there more money in splitting the property into 3 as opposed to selling it as one? It's the same amount of land. Well, when you're selling off a piece of land, unless it's farmland and you're talking big acreage amounts and it's going to be farmed, then you're kind of close to the same, dollar per not per square foot, but dollar per acre range. When you're taking a 30-acre parcel, somebody, and this is wooded too, so it's not farmland, so somebody's going to be buying that parcel to build one home on there. And the initial value for that person is the fact that they can build a home on it. Now, in most cases, a property doesn't need to be 30 acres to build a home on it. In this certain area, it would need to be 5 acres. If you're splitting off a piece of land to build a home on it, it's a 5-acre minimum in that area. So all of the initial value is in the first 5 acres. Now, yes, for some people, they want more than 5 acres. They're looking for a bigger property, but it's a very small buyer pool. So it's not like you have, there could be 25 people in the market looking for a 5-acre piece and only one person looking for a 30-acre piece. So you don't have the demand for that 30-acre piece, which means that it's harder to sell. You can't price it for the same amount per acre that you can a 5-acre piece. So because of that, we split that into 3, and there was lots more money to be made with splitting it into 3. So I told the property owner, this is obviously the better way to do it. There's more money to be made there, but in order to do that, you're going to have to invest some money to do that. It's going to cost money to do a wetland delineation, which is something that's required if you're dividing up land, at least in my area. You're going to be required to have a CSM done, which that's a certified survey map. So the surveyor that you use is going to do a detailed survey. They're going to write a new legal description. There's a lot that goes into it. So there's a pretty decent cost for that. There's no sewer and water in this area, so you're going to have to get perk tests done to make sure that a septic system is going to work there. So there's costs for that, and then there's all these other little things that can come up in between. So there was going to be an initial investment, and the particular property owner wasn't able to do that. And so I had never done this before, but I said, okay, well, let me think about this. I'm going to pause real quick right here. I just went through the drive-through at Starbucks, and oh yes, I'm getting my first sip of Starbucks for the day. So it was an early closing. I didn't have time to make my daily stop at Starbucks. I'm definitely addicted to Starbucks. Anyways, back to the video. So so I got back to the property owner and I said, okay, this is what I propose. I will do all of the work. I will, and there's a lot of work. I mean, it took, again, April to, I mean, it took almost 3/4 of the year to do this. It's not like I was working on it nonstop, but there are monthly meetings that you're going to attend at the city, town, or village. You start with the planning commission and you go from there. So there's meetings to attend, there's drawings you have to do. There's definitely things that go into it. So I said, I'll do all of the work of getting the property split up, and I will pay any of the expenses. So I will pay for all of the wetland delineation to get done. I'll pay for the perk tests. I'll pay for the survey work. And then this is what I want in return. This is, one lump sum. And then what I did is I said, we're going to divide that into 3 so that every time a property closes, I'll get 1/3 of that. So I just got 1/3 of that, and I'm really, 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 really happy and excited. And I've never done anything like that before, and it worked out very well. And I made sure that I charged an amount that was well worth it to me. So I'm very happy with the amount that I got. Now, the other great thing about this, and if you are a real estate agent or a real estate broker, in your continuing education or even getting your license, you're going to hear a lot about disclosing. Disclose everything. Unless it's confidential information from a seller or a customer or a client, well, that of course you don't disclose, but anything about yourself. So in this case, part of my agreement with doing the land split with the seller was that my real estate company is also going to list each of these lots for, a certain percentage. And so because I had an interest in these lots selling, I had a business interest in the lot selling, and I was the real estate agent for both, in this case, in this particular lot closing, not only the seller, but the buyer as well. So the buyer came to me, they didn't have an agent, so I worked neutrally between the seller and the buyer, which is something you should always, be fair, be ethical, be honest. Even if you're listing a property for a seller and a buyer comes along and you don't have a buyer agency agreement with them and you're dedicated to the seller, you're working in the seller's best interest, of course, but you're still not doing anything that is dishonest towards the buyer. You're remaining neutral. Now, technically, if you don't have a buyer's agency agreement with the buyer, your vested interest is the seller, and you need to do everything that you can to get the best possible scenario for the seller. But at the same time, again, you're not trying to deceive the buyer or anything like that. You want to be fair to both sides. And a great real estate transaction means that both sides are happy. Both sides got the fair end of the stick. And that's the best way to do it. Especially if you're representing both sides and you're at the closing there. You don't want any issues amongst the closing table. It was such a great, everybody was thankful type closing today. So going back to what I was getting into before I went off on the little tangent. So I needed to disclose the fact that I, Jason Lawrence, was hired by the seller to divide this property up, and I was paid a fee to do so. So I disclosed that to the buyers. I basically took a customer disclosure form and I wrote that in there. I also needed to have them sign that disclosure form anyways, because anytime you're performing real estate duties for a client or a customer, you need to disclose your duties as a real estate agent. So they needed to sign a disclosure anyways. So this is something that I added to it. So that way it's out there in the open. Everybody knows that I listed these properties. Yes, I did. I represented the buyer and the seller. I had a financial interest in the property selling, but I remained neutral and fair and ethical throughout the whole transaction when it came to both parties, the buyer and the seller, and my financial interest in the property. And so as long as you are just honest and you do things the right way, you're gonna be good. But disclose things like that. You know, if you're an agent or a broker, make sure that other parties involved in the transaction know that you do have a business interest in this property that's being sold. So that way you're covered. That's just what you're supposed to do. So yeah, I just wanted to give I may have mentioned that I had something like this in the works back many videos ago, and it's finally come to fruition, and it feels great. It's on a Friday too, so this is awesome. I feel great. This is a new service that I offer. If you are out there watching this video and you have a large piece of land and you want to capitalize on the amount of money that you can sell it for, well, it makes sense to split the property. And so you can hire me to do that. And even if I don't live in your state, you could hire me to consult about it. So I can, even though I don't know exactly what the state of Texas is going to require in the township of McKinney to do this, I've got a pretty good idea to where I can get us through it, and I can help you through the process. So just something I'm going to throw out there. Okay, let me rewind for a minute. So I want to share some good information in the video. I know this sounds like a brag session, and it kind of is, because it's a huge accomplishment for me, and I'm just happy about it. Anyways, to rewind a little bit, so if you're gonna split a piece of property, there's a process in which you need to do so. Step number one, if you're familiar with the area and what certain requirements are, you can look at the property on your interactive county map, and you can see how much road frontage there is. That a lot of times is going to determine, if you're doing bigger lots, how many lots that you can get. Is there wetlands on the property? That again is going to determine where you're going to be able to have driveway access and how many lots you're going to be able to split there. If you're doing more of a subdivision type thing where you're going to be putting in a road and doing smaller lots, then the road frontage isn't as important, but you obviously want to make sure that if there's not a lot of road frontage, the property opens up to where you can put a road in and there's enough room to have lots on each side of the road, or cul-de-sacs, or whatever needs to be done. So that's kind of step one, is looking at the property, and depending on the area that it's in, if there's sewer and water, then you can probably do smaller lots and put in a road, but there's going to be more expense with doing that. If you're in a rural area, then with no sewer and water, then the lots are going to be larger, and that's where you're looking for more of the road frontage. Not that you can't put in a road and still do larger lots. Your cost to develop is definitely going to be less in an area where there's no sewer and water compared to an area where there is sewer and water. But in an area where there is sewer and water, you can build more lots. So even though it costs more up front, you're going to be able to sell more lots and make the same, if not more money, than if you are investing less money and just dividing up larger lots. So that's the first thing to do, is look at the property, and you can use your knowledge, or if you don't have any knowledge, you can get in touch with the planning and zoning department at the city, town, or village and let them know what you would like to do with the property and get their feedback. You're going to have to do that for the second step anyways. Once you assess the property and you come up with an idea of what you want to do there, you can simply kind of rough sketch something out, and then I would recommend meeting with the planning and zoning department and verifying that what you're looking to do can be done, and getting some feedback from them. Once you've done that, and let's say the planning commission says, yeah, this looks good, now you just need to follow all the rest of the steps to take it from conception to officiality, if that's even a word. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to get on the agenda for the planning commission at your city, town, or village, and you're gonna have your concept. You're gonna bring that to the planning commission, which is going to consist of, depending on where you are, maybe 3 to 10 people that sit on this board. They're all gonna look at what you have, and they're gonna give you a preliminary approval, and they're gonna say, okay, yeah, this, we're okay with what you're doing. Continue to follow the steps. Once you get your preliminary approval and they look at your concept and they say, we're good with this, then you start spending money on, your wetland delineation and your survey work and things like that. You want to make sure you get that approval from them before you start spending any money. You don't want to spend all this money, bring something in, and then they say, well, no, you can't do that here, or we don't want this here. So those are your initial steps to getting a property split. Look at it yourself, assess it, get some feedback from realtors or market experts on how they think those properties would sell, or if there's a need for that here. Meet with the planning and zoning department to show them the concept and kind of get their a preliminary approval and feedback, and then get on the agenda to go in front of the planning commission. Once you've gotten the guy at the zoning departments who's on the planning commission board, once you've gotten his, yeah, this looks good, his preliminary approval, then chances are you're going to get that same preliminary approval at the planning commission meeting. Typically, you have to have things done and submitted a couple of weeks before the planning commission meets in order to be able to get on their meeting agenda. Now, the planning commission and village board, town board, city, they typically meet once a month. So that's just something to keep in mind. Get all of those dates from them as to when you need to have things submitted. But once you get on the board, or once you get on the agenda to go in front of the planning commission and you get the preliminary approval, then you can start moving forward with getting more official survey work done and getting the wetland delineation done and getting everything done that they told you in that planning commission meeting you need to do. You can start spending that money. Once you have all that stuff done, that's what takes the brunt. That's what takes the brunt of the time. I mean, that can take months upon months to do, depending on size of property and what you're exactly doing. So once you start doing that and you're done with that, you're going to then go back to the planning commission and you're going to again have them give you the okay on everything that you've done so far. Sometimes after you do all that work and you go back in there, they will tell you, okay, we want you to add this, that, or the other, and then you need to have that added by the surveyor. Once the planning commission has basically said, okay, yes, everything that you've showed me, everything that you have is good, we're going to approve this, then you can have the surveyor give you the official copy. Like, Mr. Surveyor, I'm going to get this paperwork signed off on. Give me the paperwork that needs to be signed off on, the same paperwork that needs to go to the Register of Deeds to get recorded. That way, you're going to that last meeting with that paperwork. They can officially ink that paperwork. You can take that paperwork and you can go to the Register of Deeds, which is the last step, and give it to them, and then they will record that. Once they record that, it was one big piece of land. The whole purpose and point of this was to take one big piece of land with one tax ID number and create little pieces of land with new tax ID numbers for each one. Because in order to sell a little piece of land, it has to have its own name, its own identification number. So once you submit everything that you did that's signed off by the city, town, or village, signed off by the property owner. Once you submit that to the Register of Deeds, they record that, and they will send you a copy with the individual tax ID numbers for each property. You can then officially sell those lots. Now you can market, and what I did is I marketed and sold these properties. Well, I shouldn't say sold. I marketed and got accepted offers on 2 of the 3 properties well before things were official. I mean, back in the summertime, and we're now, 6 months later. Now I told the buyers and their agents or hey, look, this is going to be contingent upon getting a final approval. Again, disclosing everything. So this is all the information I have right now. You can buy this, or you can get an accepted offer on this, but it's contingent upon being approved. If the town doesn't approve it, then you can't buy it, and we can't go through with this. So you can still market and get accepted offers on properties, but just disclose that they're not technically their own property yet. Things are in the works. And so that's what I did. And we got to the point where the buyer was completely ready to close, and we actually had to push the closing date back a couple of months, just because it took a little longer than expected to get the final signatures on everything. But the buyers, basically, they were ready to close, which is the great thing. So if you are a property owner and you're investing this money into splitting a piece of property, well, how great is it to know that before you're even officially split, you've got somebody that's going to buy and help you recoup some of this money that you're putting into it. So that, to me, is the best way to do it. So that's all I've got for this video.